You know that sound when a production line shuts down unexpectedly, that grinding halt followed by dead silence that means somebody's about to lose serious money. I'm Ryder Coleman, 47 years old, and I'd been listening to that sound for the last 15 years at Apex Industries in Dallas, plant operations manager. Not the flashiest title, but anyone who understood how real manufacturing worked knew I basically kept $800 million worth of oil and gas equipment running smooth as clockwork. I was standing in the main facility, checking pressure readings on my tablet when the conference room door didn't just open, it got kicked wide. Madison Walsh clicked into that space wearing heels that probably cost more than most of our guys made in a week. 26 years old, fresh Harvard MBA that Uncle Garrett had just handed a corner office to Chief Innovation Officer. First day on the job, first hour wearing that title like it was some kind of crown. Back in the Air Force, we had a saying about people like Madison. All thrust, no vector, lots of energy, no clue where they're actually heading. I'd seen it during my logistics days. Young officers fresh from the academy, full of textbook theories, trying to optimize supply chains they'd never actually worked. Usually ended with equipment shortages and pissed off sergeants. "Excuse me," she said, and her voice cut through the equipment hum like a damaged bearing. She wasn't looking at the production floor. She was looking at me like I was a piece of outdated machinery that needed replacing. I set my tablet down slow, turned to face her with the same calm I'd used with supply sergeants back in the service who thought they knew better. "What can I do for you, Madison?" "I'm conducting an operational efficiency review," she said, skipping right past any hello. Had this thick presentation folder in her hands, some McKinsey report that probably cost more than my truck. "And I'm seeing serious problems with your management approach." I checked my watch. Old habit from the military, always know your timeline. "Problems how?" She stepped closer, and that perfume hit you like industrial solvent. "You're using legacy protocols. Conservative timelines. Too much focus on what you call safety margins." She tapped that folder with her nail. "This isn't 1995, Ryder. We need to optimize throughput and eliminate redundant quality checks." The whole floor went quiet. The shift supervisors stopped their rounds. Junior operators froze with their coffee cups halfway to their mouths. It was that kind of silence you get right before catastrophic equipment failure. These guys had worked with me for years. They knew when something was about to go sideways. Thing is, I'd been through this dance before. Not in corporate America, but in the Air Force during the modernization initiatives of the late 90s. Young officers with business degrees trying to apply private sector efficiency to military logistics sounded great in PowerPoint presentations. Reality was different. You start cutting what they called redundancies. People die. Equipment fails. Missions collapse. That's actually why I left the service early. Couldn't stomach watching 22-year-old MBAs override 20 years of hard-earned operational knowledge. The divorce finalized right around the same time. Sarah said I was becoming too rigid, too resistant to change. Funny how life patterns repeat themselves. "Madison," I said, using that tone I'd perfected for people about to make dangerous mistakes. "I'm meeting with Spencer Hayes in 72 hours to finalize regulatory approval for an $800 million acquisition. Conservative isn't a problem here. It's what keeps people alive and equipment running." Her face went red, clashing with that designer scarf. She wasn't used to pushback. She was used to Uncle Garrett's credit card and scared interns who nodded at everything. Reminded me of those academy officers who'd never been told no by anyone wearing fewer stars than their daddy. "I am the Chief Innovation Officer," she announced, throwing around a title that sounded important but meant absolutely nothing in a production environment. "I'm implementing digital transformation initiatives. If you can't adapt to modern operational paradigms, maybe we need someone who can." Digital transformation. There it was. The magic phrase that got every MBA promoted these days. Same buzzwords I'd heard in my final Air Force review: technological integration, streamlined processes, paradigm shifts, all code for the old guys don't matter anymore. It was so ridiculous I almost laughed, but I knew what this really was. She didn't care about throughput or efficiency. She wanted to take down the senior guy on day one. Show everyone who was boss by targeting the biggest name on the floor. Classic power play. Establish dominance by destroying the alpha. My phone buzzed. Text from Hunter, my 16-year-old. "Dad, Coach wants to know if you can help with equipment transport Saturday. Says you know trucks better than anyone." Kid was proud of his old man's expertise. Always bragged to his teammates about how I kept million-dollar machinery running. how I could diagnose problems just by listening to engine sounds. Traditional skills that couldn't be downloaded from the internet or optimized by algorithms. Go back to your office, redo your safety protocols, and give me optimization metrics that make sense for today's competitive landscape, Madison said, crossing her arms like she was talking to a new recruit. I really looked at her then, saw the shaking hands, the desperate need to prove herself, and the complete lack of understanding about what actually happened in this building every day. She was scared, terrified of looking incompetent in front of Uncle Garrett. So she was going to fix that by making me look incompetent instead. No, I said simply. I've got systems to monitor. Turned back to my tablet. Figured that was the end of it. Figured wrong. You're terminated, she said. Those words just hung there in the air like a gas leak alarm that hadn't been acknowledged yet. The whole floor went dead still. Even the equipment seemed to quiet down, like the machinery knew something important was happening. I turned around. She was breathing hard, eyes wide. She'd just pulled the emergency stop without knowing what she was shutting down. You're serious, I said. Not really a question. You're being insubordinate to a superior officer, she said. Voice cracking. Military terminology. Cute. Pack your equipment. Security will escort you out. I looked at those terrified faces on the floor. I looked at the $800 million contract specs on my tablet. Then something clicked. The same cold clarity I'd felt during my last Air Force evaluation when they told me I wasn't flexible enough for the new digital logistics protocols. Understood, I said. Madison blinked. She was expecting a fight, maybe some begging. You're absolutely right, Madison, I said, closing my tablet. Efficiency is everything. I didn't wait for her to respond, just walked past her toward my office. She thought she'd just shown everyone who was in charge. Had no idea she just fired the only person in the building who could navigate the EPA compliance maze for the Hayes acquisition. My office was organized like mission control. Unlike those sterile conference rooms, my desk was operational central. Equipment manuals, supplier contact sheets, and a Rolodex that was basically the most valuable database in the entire facility. Madison probably thought everything was on computers. She didn't understand that in heavy manufacturing, the real business happened through personal relationships, handshake agreements, and decades of earned trust that never touched the company servers. The thing about knowledge, real operational knowledge, is that it lives in your head, not in filing cabinets. Those EPA compliance files Madison would be looking for, sure, the basic paperwork existed digitally, but the actual relationships with regulatory inspectors, the verbal agreements about timeline flexibility, the personal guarantees I'd made based on 15 years of spotless safety records, all that walked out the door with me. I didn't rush packing up. Rushing looks like panic, and I wasn't panicking. Learned that in the Air Force during base closures, you maintain operational discipline even when everything's falling apart around you. I opened my drawers like I was handling live ordnance, careful and methodical. First, personal stuff. Photo of Hunter in his football uniform grinning after their homecoming win last month. Kid was proud of his old man then, bragging to teammates about how I could fix any mechanical problem just by listening to it run. Photo of my dad in his Air Force dress uniform, taken the day he retired after 30 years of keeping transport planes in the sky. Traditional skills passed down through generations. Skills that couldn't be Googled or optimized by MBA consultants. Then came the brass compass Spencer Hayes gave me after we closed the turbine contract 3 years back. Not some cheap corporate gift. This was his grandfather's Navy compass from World War II. Spencer knew I'd understand the significance. Military men don't give away family heirlooms lightly. That compass meant something. It meant respect. Finally, the Rolodex, my personal network, 15 years of contacts. It hit my briefcase with a solid thud. Names and numbers of people who'd worked with me long enough to trust my word over any company letterhead, suppliers who'd bend delivery schedules because Ryder Coleman asked personally, inspectors who'd take my call at 6 a.m. because they knew I'd never waste their time. Brooke Turner, my operations assistant, was hovering in the doorway, looking like she'd just witnessed a reactor meltdown. Brooke had been with me 8 years, since she was fresh out of community college. I'd taught her how to read equipment specs, how to spot problems before they became catastrophes. She was smart, loyal, and terrified. Ryder, she whispered, is it true? Did she really terminate you? It's true, Brooke, I said, staying calm. I picked up the preliminary EPA compliance files for the Hayes acquisition. held them for a second. These belong to the company. Set them right back down in the center of my desk. But the inspection, Brooke said, the filing is in 72 hours. Nobody else knows about the environmental grandfather clauses. Nobody knows about those emission exemptions from the 1980s. She was right, and we both knew it. Those exemptions were older than Madison. Negotiated back when Spencer's father was expanding the family business, back when environmental regulations were different. The paperwork existed, but understanding how to navigate the modern regulatory maze while honoring those grandfathered agreements. That knowledge lived in exactly one place in my head. I'm sure Madison's got it covered, I said, and that lie tasted sweet as Texas honey. She's got a Harvard MBA, Brooke. She understands digital transformation. I cleared my computer, logged out of everything, wiped my local files. Wasn't destroying company property, just removing my personal configurations. If they wanted to handle this regulatory nightmare, they'd have to use whatever standard protocols they had on file, not the customized systems I'd developed over 15 years of trial and error. When I walked out of my office for the last time, the whole floor was pretending to work, heads down, but everyone's eyes tracking me. It was like watching a crew see their chief engineer get thrown off the platform by someone who didn't know how to read a pressure gauge. These guys had worked alongside me through equipment failures, emergency shutdowns, safety inspections that could shut down the whole operation. They knew what was walking out that door. Madison was waiting by the elevators with 2 security guards who looked uncomfortable as hell. Dustin Clark, head of security, had worked with me for 8 years. He'd seen me stay late during shutdowns, ordering pizza for his team during those long maintenance nights. Dustin was ex-military too, Army infantry. He understood chain of command, but he also understood when orders didn't make tactical sense. Need to check for company property. Madison told them, trying to sound authoritative. Dustin looked at my briefcase without even opening it. He's good, Miss Walsh. Military respect. Dustin knew I wasn't the type to steal staplers or company pens. Madison made this annoyed sound. Fine, just get him out of here. I hit the elevator button and waited. When those doors opened, I turned to face Madison one last time. She was ready for me to blow up, maybe threaten to sue or something. The whole floor was watching through the glass walls, waiting for the explosion. Instead, I smiled. The kind of smile you give someone who just handed you the keys to their own destruction while thinking they'd locked you out. Thanks, Madison, I said. Her face went confused for a second. For what? For clearing up the chain of command, I said. Real educational. Good luck with those EPA compliance protocols. The environmental liability stuff can get tricky. I stepped into the elevator. What liability stuff? She said, stepping forward as the doors started closing. Oh, the digital files cover everything, I said quietly. Just follow the database. The doors cut off her face right as she started to realize she might be missing something critical. Going down in that elevator, I felt the pressure equalize. But honestly, my position was actually improving. I checked my watch, old military habit. 11:30 a.m. By noon, legal would be asking questions. By 2 p.m., the partners would be confused. By tomorrow morning, the bleeding would start. I walked out into bright Texas sunshine and didn't grab my truck right away. Walked 4 blocks to this quiet diner, where the waitresses called you Han and the coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. Ordered black coffee, sat by the window. Turned my phone off, let them sit in operational silence for a while. Spent the afternoon at White Rock Lake, watching fishing boats and thinking about systems that work because every component does its job. Amazing what you notice when you're not carrying the weight of an entire production facility on your shoulders. For the first time in months, I actually saw the water, felt the breeze, heard birds instead of machinery. Hunter called around 4 p.m. Dad, you coming to practice tonight? Coach wants to talk about that equipment transport. Might be running late, son, I said. Work situation's changing. Everything okay? Kid was sharp. Heard something in my voice. Everything's fine, Hunter. Just some corporate politics. Nothing you need to worry about. Okay. Love you, Dad. Love you too, son. That's what this was really about. Not just professional respect or corporate politics. It was about showing Hunter that you don't back down when someone tries to steamroll you with credentials and attitude. You stand up for what you know is right, even when it costs you something. At 6 p.m., back home with a Shiner Bock, I turned my phone back on. Thing buzzed like a malfunctioning alarm for 3 straight minutes, 14 missed calls from work, 5 from HR, 7 from numbers I didn't recognize, 29 new messages. Brook, 12:15 p.m. Ryder Legal came down asking who authorized your termination. Madison's locked in Uncle Garrett's office. There's yelling. Brook, 1:50 p.m. Spencer Hayes people tried calling you. Madison took the call. It went badly. She told them you had stress issues. There was yelling on their end, too. Brook, 3:45 p.m. Where are the EPA grandfather files? Madison says you deleted them. System shows they never existed digitally. Everyone's freaking out. Garrett called emergency board meeting. I smiled, turning that beer bottle in my hands. Of course they weren't on the system. Those EPA files weren't documents. They were relationships. Verbal agreements about emission transfers, personal guarantees I'd made with regulatory contacts about timeline flexibility, handshake promises based on my 15-year track record. All that knowledge was currently becoming worthless in Madison's inexperienced hands. Email from Colton Reed, the CFO, UArgent employment issue. Ryder, major communication breakdown here. Call me immediately. We need to discuss bringing you back before the Hayes deadline. We can work this out. Madison maybe got carried away. Let's not let personalities kill this deal. Personalities. They always called it personalities when someone pushed back, but innovation when the same person succeeded. Same thing happened in the Air Force. Questioning inefficient orders wasn't strategic thinking. It was attitude problems. Another message from Dustin in security. Ryder, this is off the books. Madison had me pull your personnel file. She's looking for anything to justify the termination retroactively. Thought you should know. Smart move. Madison. Classic CYA behavior. When your impulsive decision starts looking catastrophic, you dig for evidence that it was actually brilliant all along. I'd seen officers do the same thing after botched operations. I didn't reply to any of them, could picture the scene at the office perfectly. Sun going down, long shadows across the production floor. Madison exhausted, that designer perfume going stale, her power suit wrinkled from stress. She'd be discovering that Chief Innovation Officer got you compliance software, but not competence, definitely not specialized knowledge. She had the files. She could see the $800 million valuation, but she didn't understand the engineering reality. Didn't know that Section 7, Subsection C about environmental protocols was actually coded language about specific EPA exemptions that Spencer's grandfather had secured back in 1987. Looked like a liability on paper, but it was the emotional foundation of the deal for the Hayes family. Try to optimize that to save costs, which any MBA would do, and she'd insult Spencer so badly he'd walk away before the coffee got cold. Another text came through from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew it was Colton's private line. Ryder, pick up your phone, name your price. I stared at that message. Name your price. My price wasn't money. My price was professional respect. And unfortunately for them, respect was something they'd just thrown in the industrial waste bin. Set the phone down. Wasn't going to save them tonight. Tonight, I was going to grill burgers for Hunter when he got back from football practice. Help him with his physics homework, and maybe watch a movie. Something about disasters, something about experienced engineers walking away while headquarters burned behind them. Here's the thing about leverage, real leverage. There's a specific drawer in my home office that stays locked. Doesn't have cash or jewelry, has relationships. I walked over to my desk and got a small brass key from under this ceramic mug Hunter made me in shop class sophomore year. Kid was proud of that mug, ugly as it was. Said it reminded him that working with your hands was just as important as working with your brain. Lock opened with a satisfying click. Inside on black felt was a single leather folder, worn at the edges, smelling like motor oil and old paper. Gold letters on front. Air Force Personnel Liaison, Hayes Family Defense Contracts. Most people thought Apex Industries hired me because of my resume. Truth was more complicated. Spencer Hayes and I went way back, connected through military supply chains and family history. My dad had been Spencer's father's logistics coordinator during Desert Storm. Chief Master Sergeant Coleman, they called him. Best damn supply guy in the Gulf, according to Colonel Hayes. When equipment broke down in 120-degree heat, my dad kept the birds flying. When supply lines got cut, he found ways to get parts through. Old-school military competence that couldn't be downloaded or digitized. I grew up hearing those stories. Spent summers at the Hayes compound when Dad worked maintenance contracts there after retirement. Spencer was just coming back from his own Air Force stint then, learning the family business from his father. We'd work on engines together. Swap military stories. Talk about the difference between book learning and real-world experience. That's why Spencer insisted on me when Apex first pitched the acquisition 3 years ago. He didn't just want a contractor, he wanted someone who understood military precision, family loyalty, and the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. I opened that folder. Inside was one sheet of paper with a direct phone number, not a business line, the number for the phone Spencer kept in his workshop. The one that went straight to him, no assistants, no corporate gatekeepers. Calling this number would break every confidentiality clause in my employment contract. Professional suicide, basically. But then I thought about Madison's face when she looked at my protocols like they were broken equipment. Thought about the smugness of terminating me in front of people I'd trained. Thought about Hunter asking why his dad got fired for being too good at his job. I picked up my phone and dialed. 2 rings. This is Spencer. That deep voice immediately familiar. Still had that command presence at 65. Same tone he'd used briefing flight crews back in his Air Force days. It's Ryder. Pause. Both of us calculating. Spencer was sharp. He'd already know this call meant trouble. Thought we were staying quiet until the Friday filing. Things have changed, I said, keeping it steady. Changed how? The warmth left his voice, replaced by steel from a guy who'd built defense contractors from nothing after military retirement. I've been terminated. Dead silence. Went on so long I thought the call dropped. Then, terminated. By who? New Chief Innovation Officer, Madison Walsh, Garrett Stone's niece, said I was operationally inefficient, resistant to digital transformation protocols. I could almost hear Spencer's blood pressure rising. He'd dealt with enough MBA consultants over the years to know the type. And who's handling the EPA liaison work now? Nobody with actual experience, I said. Madison thinks the computer files are sufficient. Spencer made a sound that could have been a laugh or a growl. Computer files show the Montana environmental assets as profit-draining liabilities. Without your personal notes, their systems will flag it for immediate disposal within 6 months. That's correct. So they terminated the only guy who knows the regulatory landscape 72 hours before the biggest acquisition in their history. That's the situation. Long pause. I could hear machinery in the background. Spencer was in his workshop, probably working on one of his vintage aircraft engines. The man never stopped tinkering, never stopped learning. That's why we understood each other. Ryder, Spencer said, voice dropping low. You available for breakfast tomorrow? Currently unemployed, Spencer. I'm available all day. Good. Cattleman's Club, 8 a.m. You know the place? I'll find it. And Ryder? Don't sign anything with them. No severance, no consulting contracts, nothing, wouldn't dream of it. I hung up, heart was running steady and strong. Had just crossed the line. Wasn't just a terminated employee anymore. I was actively working against them. That night, Hunter got home from practice full of stories about college scouts and scholarship possibilities. Kid was working hard, earning his opportunities through sweat and dedication. Traditional values. When he asked about work, I just said things were changing. New opportunities on the horizon. You okay, Dad? You seem different. Different how? I don't know. Calmer. Like when you're working on the truck and everything just clicks into place. Smart kid. Everything was clicking into place. Cattleman's Club serves breakfast with the kind of quiet efficiency that makes you feel like you're planning something important, which we were. Spencer Hayes looked exactly like always. Perfect Western suit, silver hair military style, eyes that had seen everything twice. At 65, he still carried himself like the Air Force colonel he'd been 30 years ago. They called my legal team this morning, Spencer said, spreading butter on toast like he was performing precision work. Woman named Madison. Sounded like she was drowning. I drank my coffee and waited. Spencer never rushed to the point military briefing style. Context first, told my lawyer you were unavailable due to sudden medical emergency. He paused, those steel-gray eyes meeting mine, said you were in the hospital with exhaustion, but had briefed her on everything. I set my cup down carefully. The nerve was incredible. Not just a lie, a dangerous, verifiable lie that could void contracts and trigger legal complications. If I was sick, the deal could be legally delayed. If I was terminated, the key personnel clause in our agreement would kill the whole acquisition. She's buying time, I said. Thinks she can optimize her way through the environmental compliance protocols? She thinks I'm an idiot, Spencer corrected. Thinks I'm a walking checkbook who won't notice when the architect of my deal disappears. He wiped his mouth precisely. My assistant, Oliver, did some digging. Apparently, HR is in complete meltdown over this Madison situation. The board didn't know about your termination until this morning. The CFO is having what my sources call a complete breakdown. Sounds like Colton. Man lives for quarterly numbers, here's where we stand, Ryder. Spencer leaned forward, same intensity he'd used briefing pilots before dangerous missions. I don't do business with amateurs, and I definitely don't work with liars. The Apex deal is dead. He paused, letting that sink in. But I still need to expand operations, and I still want you running the technical side. Spencer reached into his briefcase, pulled out a thick document. Not an acquisition agreement. A consulting contract. My holding company needs a director of strategic operations. Salary doubles what you were making. Equity is significant. First assignment. Find new suppliers for my manufacturing expansion. I looked at the contract. This was freedom. This was power. This was perfect payback wrapped in legitimate business opportunity. One more thing, Spencer added, that predator grin spreading across his weathered face. I haven't canceled tomorrow's meeting at Apex yet. Scheduled for 9 a.m. Why keep the appointment? Because I want to watch her face when she tries to explain why the hospitalized guy is sitting across the table from me, looking remarkably healthy. You want me there? No. I want you in the lobby. I want you to be the last thing she sees before her career ends. Spencer's eyes went cold. I'll handle the meeting. You handle looking professional. My phone buzzed, automated alert that my Apex access had been permanently revoked. But then another notification news story about acquisition rumors and potential delays, speculation about key executive departures. Word was getting out fast in the tight Dallas business community. I accept, I said, picking up the pen. Good. Now finish your eggs. Watching empires collapse takes energy. That afternoon, I drove past the Apex building, stayed across the street behind Sunglasses, watching the chaos through those floor-to-ceiling windows. People pacing on the third floor, lights blazing at 4 p.m. on what should have been a quiet Thursday. Looked like a control room during emergency shutdown procedures. Checked email on my personal phone. One last desperate message from Madison. Ryder, please call me. We can fix this. I didn't mean it. It was operational stress. Uncle Garrett's asking questions I can't answer. Please, I deleted it without responding. No emergency reversals in the big leagues, Madison. You wanted digital transformation. This is what efficient looks like. Morning of the showdown, sky was dark gray, threatening rain. Matched what I figured was happening in the executive suite across the street. I sat in the diner's corner booth with perfect view of Apex's main entrance. Oliver Reed, Spencer's personal assistant, guy who looked carved from granite and dressed by professionals, sat across from me. We had papers spread on the table. My official onboarding paperwork for Hayes Holdings. Spencer's 5 minutes out, Oliver said, checking his military-precise watch. He wants you visible from the lobby. I looked up through those windows, could see someone in a white suit pacing by the reception desk like a caged animal. Madison. She was gesturing frantically at security, waving her hands, trying to make everything look perfect for Spencer's arrival, desperate to appear in complete control of a situation that was already beyond salvage. Then she stopped, looked out toward our table. Distance was maybe 50 yards, but I watched her freeze when she saw me sitting there. More importantly, she recognized Oliver. Everyone in Dallas business knew Oliver Reed, Spencer's advance man, his operational scout. She pressed her face against the glass, mouth opening in what looked like panic. Grabbed her phone, started dialing frantically. My phone stayed quiet. I'd blocked her number an hour ago. She sees us, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Perfect, Oliver said without turning around. Panic makes people stupid, and Spencer hates stupid people. I watched her lose it in real time. She spun to the receptionist, pointing at us, probably screaming about corporate espionage or surveillance. The poor receptionist just shook her head, looking terrified. Madison ran toward the elevators, rushing back upstairs to warn. Who? Uncle Garrett? The board? What could she possibly say? The guy I terminated for being outdated is having coffee with the buyer's main operative. That was admitting catastrophic failure in corporate speak. She's running upstairs, I reported. Oliver nodded without emotion. She'll try to control the narrative. Too late. The narrative left with your toolbox yesterday. He gathered our papers efficiently. You're officially signed, Ryder. Welcome to the family. Spencer's instructions, wait exactly 20 minutes, then walk across the street. Just stand in the lobby. Be the ghost at the funeral. I watched Spencer's black Ford F-150 pull up to the curb, not some fancy luxury sedan, but a working man's truck with custom modifications. Driver opened the door. Spencer stepped out, buttoned his jacket, checked his cufflinks, and looked up at that building like a demolition expert studying a condemned structure. He walked straight into enemy territory. I waited 5 minutes, 10. Rain started falling, blurring the glass, turning everything into watercolor, but I could see it all clearly. The pieces moving into position for the final play. At exactly 20 minutes, I paid for coffee, checked my reflection in the window. My suit was perfect. Time for the final act. Apex's lobby was designed to intimidate visitors with 3 stories of marble, expensive water features, and acoustics that made every footstep echo. I pushed through those revolving doors, the sound of artificial waterfalls washing over everything. The scene was perfect corporate theater. Spencer Hayes standing dead center of the space near the security turnstiles. Not moving toward elevators, just standing there like a monument to operational excellence and military bearing. Madison was there too, flanked by Colton Reed and Uncle Garrett Stone, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. Must have sprinted down the stairs because she looked rattled. White suit wrinkled, designer perfume turned sour from stress sweat. I walked quietly across that marble floor, heels clicking steady rhythm that cut through the water noise, stopped about 20 feet away, close enough to hear every word, far enough to observe the complete tactical situation. Unexpected complications, Madison was saying, voice high and bouncing off the hard surfaces like a ricocheting bullet. But like I explained, Ryder's got medical issues. He's in the hospital. I'm fully briefed and ready to optimize the acquisition parameters. Spencer stared at her without blinking. Perfect military stillness, complete command authority. Medical issues, he repeated. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through that space like a rifle shot. Yes, Madison nodded frantically. Very sudden, but he briefed me on everything. I can handle all the operational protocols with full efficiency. Spencer pulled out his phone, tapped the screen once. Interesting, Spencer said, voice dropping to conversational level that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. Because I just got a text from him. Says the coffee across the street was excellent. Madison froze. Blood drained from her face so fast, she looked like someone had pulled her power plug. Colton Reed's head snapped up like he'd been electrocuted. What? Spencer turned slightly, scanning the lobby with tactical precision. His eyes found mine across that marble expanse. Didn't smile. Just gave the smallest nod mission acknowledgement between military professionals. Madison spun around like a broken compass. Saw me standing there healthy, calm, holding my briefcase. The hospitalized invalid, miraculously recovered, and looking remarkably professional. The silence that followed could have crushed steel beams. Madison stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me like I was some kind of ghost. He's lying. He must have. I terminated him for cause. The truth spilled out before she could stop it. Corporate suicide in real time. Colton turned on Madison with a face like an overheating boiler about to blow. You did what? You terminated the regulatory expert without consulting legal, without consulting the board, without consulting anyone. He was insubordinate, Madison cried, backing against the security desk like cornered prey. Disrespectful to modern protocols. I'm the chief innovation officer. Spencer laughed, dry, harsh sound that echoed off marble like breaking glass. You terminated the architect of an $800 million deal over methodology disagreements. He turned to Garrett Stone, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. This is the leadership I'm acquiring. This is the judgment I'm investing in, Mr. Hayes, please. Colton stepped forward, hands up like he was surrendering to superior forces. This is a massive misunderstanding. Madison's new to operations. We can bring Ryder back immediately. Big bonus, promotion, whatever it takes to fix this. Spencer raised his hand like stopping traffic at a military checkpoint. No. He turned to me with perfect theatrical timing. Ryder, you currently employed by this company. I stepped forward, voice carrying clearly across that space. No, Mr. Hayes. My employment was terminated Tuesday morning for operational inefficiency. Then nobody here has authority to negotiate anything. Spencer looked at Madison, who was shaking now, tears starting to stream down her face. Since there's no one I trust to handle compliance, this meeting is over. Deal's dead. He signaled to Oliver by the doors. Good day. You can't do this, Madison screamed, voice cracking with desperation. Uncle Garrett will sue. We have binding contracts. Contracts depend on good faith and competent parties. Spencer said, cold as liquid nitrogen. You've demonstrated neither. He turned and walked out, every step measured and final. The second those revolving doors closed, the lobby exploded, not literally, but the shockwave was just as devastating. Colton Reed turned on Madison with 15 years of corporate fury finally unleashed. "Do you understand what just walked out that door?" he roared. "That was $800 million. That was our stock price. That was everyone's retirement." I stood there, watching the meltdown, adjusting my watch like I always did when systems failed catastrophically. Madison looked around desperately for backup, for someone to blame besides herself. Her eyes landed on me. The hatred was pure poison, mixed with the terrifying realization that she'd initiated her own destruction sequence. "This is your fault," she screamed. "You planned this. You sabotaged everything. I planned to do my job," I said calmly, voice cutting through her hysteria like a precision instrument. "You planned the rest, Madison." Garrett Stone finally found his voice. What was left of it? "Ryder, please. Ignore everything she said. She's suspended, effective, immediately. Come back. We'll make this right." I looked at him, decent man, who'd let family loyalty cloud his business judgment. "Can't do it, Garrett. You can't rehire someone who already has a new job." I reached into my briefcase, pulled out my Hayes Holdings paperwork. "The client," I said simply. The realization hit them like equipment failure. Colton staggered backward. "You're working for Hayes? You're working for Spencer Hayes. As of this morning, Director of Strategic Operations, which means if you want to salvage anything from this mess, maybe sell the pieces for scrap metal, you'll be negotiating with me." I checked my watch one final time, but not today. Today I'm going shopping for new work clothes. These have bad memories. I walked toward the exit, leaving them in that marble tomb they'd built for themselves. Behind me, Colton was screaming into his phone, calling lawyers, calling board members, calling people who weren't going to answer because the news was already spreading through Dallas business circles like wildfire. The damage was permanent. 3 days later, Apex stock dropped 28%. News was full of stories about management crisis and failed acquisitions. The board fired Madison and forced Garrett into early retirement. Colton resigned rather than face shareholder lawsuits. That evening, my phone rang. "Hunter. Dad saw the news about your old company, stocks completely tanking. You okay? Better than okay, son. Just started a new job with people who respect experience." "Good for you. Mom always said you were too good for corporate politics." After I hung up, I sat on my porch with a beer, looking out at the lights of Dallas. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new with Spencer Real Manufacturing, quality products, traditional values applied to modern challenges. Sometimes the best move is letting incompetent people destroy themselves while you build something better. That's not just operational strategy. That's life. In corporate America, your knowledge walks out the door with you, but only if you're smart enough to take it with you. They'll call you outdated right up until the moment they realize you were the foundation holding everything together. Madison learned that lesson the hard way. Some education you can't get from Harvard. The real lesson isn't about revenge. It's about recognizing when your value is so obvious to everyone except the person signing your termination papers.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection, Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. Begun. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again.
Some days feel off, like I'm standing but still falling. A little pain, a little tired, and no one to tell it all to.
There are days that feel unsteady, like I'm drifting out of place. Every step just feels so heavy, with a smile I have to fake. A little hurt I keep inside me, a little weight I always hide, and 1,000 quiet worries I've been holding deep inside. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, a little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. I keep walking through the silence like it's all I've ever known. Every crowded room reminds me how it feels to be alone. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you. Maybe one day I'll be stronger, maybe I'll learn how to speak, but for now I keep it buried in the parts of me too weak. There's no one here to tell it to, no one who would understand. So I carry all these feelings like they're slipping through my hands. A little broken, little lost, trying hard to just get through. All these nights I stay awake with everything I never say to you.